Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Thursday, September 14th, 2023. Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski joins us now. Colonel, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. You and I have been students of the intelligence community for a long time. You professionally, me as an amateur and as a television analyst. You know a lot about this. How did the CIA get to the point where it is now, where it spies and doesn't reveal the data in a way to protect the United States, but covets the data, where it runs a private army that it kills whoever the president tells it to kill, or sometimes kills whoever it thinks the president wants it to kill, where the person who signed the National Security Act in 1947, Harry Truman, by 1963, renounced what he did? How did this happen?
Well, secrecy is part of it, and you kind of can't get away from the secrecy aspect. But I think it's the black money. I think it's the hidden money, the lack of accountability of budgets, and the politicized nature of the CIA. They started out from the OSS, and they were patriots. The people, or at least they considered themselves very strong American patriots, and I think that it's kind of an elitist view that they had, that they are the vanguards of liberty. And so there's a little bit of excess pride or, elitism. They deserve the money. They deserve the secrecy. You don't need to know because they're taking care of you, that kind of thing. And then I think as time has gone on, we have less and less actual intelligence people that are leading the CIA. And that's been well observed by many people. We have politicians that run it, and politicians are known for growing their own armies and trying to increase their budget share as aggressively as they possibly can.
Phil Giraldi points out that only two directors of the CIA, Bill Casey and Gina Haspel, I'm hardly touting her as a model person, but nevertheless were themselves agents, operatives, officers, or analysts for the CIA, and that you're quite correct, Colonel, that most CIA directors have been politicians. George Tenet, who ran the CIA at the time of 9/11, was a congressional staffer when Bush plucked him out of obscurity. Mike Pompeo was a congressman. A politician. I don't know what Jack Brennan was, if he's under Obama, if he was a serious intelligence person or not. But the point is, you're right, it is run by politicians. Now we're getting to my field. There's a clause in the Constitution that says no money shall be spent from the federal treasury, but that which is reproduced publicly in a journal. Try and find out how the CIA is spending its money. It would be impossible.
Wouldn't it? Yeah. I think it is impossible. I mean, I think at this point, to discover, the Pentagon itself, not the classified part, can't account for the money that it spends. So apparently it's quite easy to lose money if you work for government, if you're a government agency. And the CIA actually actively works to hide its expenditures and its projects, in part because they are unconstitutional and they know that they are.
The FBI has conscripted the CIA to help it with spying. I guess the CIA's tools for doing this are more sophisticated, even though the CIA charter, the one that Truman 15 years later would regret having signed, expressly prohibits it from A, surveillance in the United States, and B, having anything to do with law enforcement. Those two compromises were necessary in order to get this thing through Congress. There were members of Congress who were prescient in 1947. They were afraid the CIA might become what we now know it has become. So Truman said, no spying in the U.S., no law enforcement, and that's in the charter, that's in the statute. But that, of course, is not honored at all, and nobody's in a position to sue to compel it to be honored, and the president's must just enjoy having that power. Look at the last three presidents, Obama, Trump, Biden. They all used the CIA to murder people. In Obama's case, they were American citizens, the Al-Awlaki and his son. So there must be this pervasive attitude that the Constitution doesn't apply, natural rights don't apply, common morality doesn't apply, transparency doesn't apply. We do what we want and whatever we can get away with.
Yeah, that's pretty true. And I think when we saw this to some extent when Gina Haspel, who is a career intelligence person, but when she had her confirmation hearings, I mean, she's a torturer. She's a violator of law, a disrespecter of the Constitution, and that didn't have any impact on her. She was confirmed with very little trouble. Being a female, I guess. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I think what it is the Congress or whoever the ruling party is and the president, they like the power that the CIA offers, secretive ability to make things happen, so to speak, to get rid of people that they don't want. They like it. They like it. And I think a lot of politicians are criminals, and this is a criminal enterprise, so it makes sense that they go together.
Yes. RFK Jr., I don't know if he's going to get the Democratic nomination or be elected president, and I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but on many I do agree with him, has basically said he would do what his uncle famously promised to do. Now, his uncle said he was going to, JFK would smash it into 1,000 pieces. RFK was a little less violent and said he would put them out of business, or he would defund them. I think they have a grip. Not just the CIA, I think the whole intelligence community, because the NSA is larger than the CIA and its spying is far more pervasive within the U.S. I think they have a grip on the Congress. I think they have dirt on members of Congress because their budgets just keep getting increased no matter what the outrageous behavior is that's exposed. Remember the Frank Church hearings? You and I were young. It was in the mid-'70s. What reforms were there? Oh, they gave us FISA, which just put stuff even deeper into secrecy.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I imagine, especially with the capabilities that we have today, that these agencies either have legitimate dirt or embarrassing situations on every single one who's elected, or have the ability to create stuff that's not necessarily true would be believed. And it really, as long as it's believed initially, a few weeks before an election, 6 months before a campaign, it doesn't take much to derail the guy or the gal who wants to be a congressperson.
It appears that President Biden is planning to run for re-election. I still think a bunch of Democrats are going to come to him, just like Barry Goldwater and Howard Baker went to Richard Nixon and said, it's not going to last. And he wisely saved the country from a constitutional crisis and resigned. I think some leading Democrats will go to old Joe and say, Joe, it's just not going to work. Not resign, but withdraw from re-election gracefully. Nevertheless, I also think in his mind, he wants to run as a wartime president, which means more money, more death, more killing. I mean, how crazy is that, Karen?
Well, the idea that he thinks the wartime label is going to help him, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So the information that, there's very few countries that cling to the fantasy that Ukraine is somehow winning this, somehow achieving its goals. It's not. So that storyline is going to fall through. That is not something I would want to run on, and that's the war he's running on. A terrible, deadly, destructive situation that is not a win. So I don't see how, if he thinks he's a wartime president, I mean, that's insane. But I do think they'll come to him, and I think maybe they've tried to already. Maybe they came to him and he forgot, and they have to come again for the second time. But they definitely it's a really terrible thing for the Democrats for this guy to be their visible leader. He's a disaster, and it's getting worse. And people, we're an aging society. We all have grandparents. Well, we had grandparents, and we all have parents, and we're very sensitized to what aging does. We're familiar with it. This is not unusual to see someone, but what is unusual, of course, is to see him try to do this job that he's trying to do,
Right.
and he's doing a terrible
Right.
job of it. Even the Democrats agree that he's doing a terrible job.
Right.
So yeah,
I
I think
mean,
they'll end up stopping this.
Trump chides him by saying he can't put two sentences together. Sadly, that is true.
It's awful.
Yeah.
And he's also showing signs of anger, quick temper. She always had a quick temper, there's no doubt. But it's not controllable by his staff, and he's going that something's going to happen, and it will be even more embarrassing than it's been before, and then they will abruptly have to do something. And I think
Right.
They need to get him to step down, or at least call off the election. Sure. Or
Right.
wait, what did I say? Not call off the election, not run for election.
As we speak, the news is breaking that his son Hunter has been indicted on 3 gun charges. I haven't seen the indictment, but I believe they are falsifying a gun application by not revealing an addiction to drugs at the time he acquired the gun, and then acquiring it and then transporting it. I'm going to guess those are the charges. It's interesting because those statutes may be unconstitutional in light of a Supreme Court opinion recently coming down that say the Supreme Court opinion says gun laws today must mirror what they were in 1791 when the Second Amendment was ratified. Well, in 1791, the founding fathers were smoking hemp, so they obviously didn't think that being addicted to any kind of a drug was an impediment to carrying a gun. We'll see where it's going, but it adds to his woes because now his son is going to be frog marched into a courtroom. It's a federal courtroom, so there's no cameras, but there's the specter of his son being on trial. Let's leave old Joe for a while. The sanctions. We know they haven't worked. We know that the American government, the CIA and the Navy destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline, and that seriously impaired Germany's ability to heat the country. Last winter, thankfully for the Germans, was a mild one. This one's supposed to be a very cold and bitter one. The sanctions have not only not worked on Russia, they've harmed the West. Russia is just as prosperous or more so before the sanctions. And yet Zelensky and I guess Jake Sullivan are calling for more sanctions.
Currently, we see a prolonged sanctions pause from our partners and Russia's overly active attempts to circumvent the sanctions. It's crucial to add solutions to the free world, which should defend itself and have success in this. And even more so, it should avoid any attempts to use free world companies, technologies, and products to wage war against freedom. 3 priorities: further sanctions against Russia's energy sector, real restrictions on the supply of chips and microelectronics in general to terrorists, and further blocking of the Russian financial sector. This world sanctions offensive must resume.
Well, I don't think he's going to get it, and I don't know if that's, Karen, I don't know if that's for domestic political consumption, because every economist that looks at this, even those that support the war, will tell you the sanctions have been a disaster.
That's right. And we don't need to take lessons from a comedian on how the economy works. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's even liberal, even Zelensky supporters recognize that these sanctions have strengthened and improved Russia's ability to not just get weapons made and energy sold, but actually has enhanced Russia's network. I mean, look at what's, Russia's friends in number are growing. Our friends in number are shrinking, and in part because we use sanctions so liberally, so randomly, so speciously, that they don't trust us. They don't want to be too entangled with the United States because, look at them cross-eyed, they're going to cut something off. They're going to mess with your economy. Nobody wants that. It's not the way to do business. It always comes back and harms us, and it is harming us.
The decision to impose sanctions, and of course I question their constitutionality, even though as far back as 1936, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of presidentially imposed sanctions on foreign governments and foreign private actors in the commercial sphere. But the decision to impose sanctions may be almost as consequential and catastrophic for the West as the decision to aid the war. Look at the rise of BRICS. Now, you don't see anybody knocking on the door to join the G20. You see dozens of countries knocking on the door to join BRICS. They're going to have a reserve currency, which may very well supplant or replace the dollar. Thank you, Joe Biden.
Yeah, it's that is going to be Joe Biden's legacy too, whether he runs again or not. He's accomplished this in really a couple of years. It's 2.5 years. This is what he has done, and it's very possibly irreversible at this point.
Yes.
As far as
here's President Zelensky in an interview with Fareed Zakaria of CNN, touting a couple of odd statements. The domino theory, you got to stop Putin now before he goes into Romania or Poland. He didn't add Paris or Berlin in there. That would have been too much. Then he claims this is a common war and there must be common pain, but there's not going to be a happy ending.
It's not the movie with the happy end. We will not have happy end. We lost a lot of people. No happy end. That we have to recognize it. A victory, that's only one thing that can bring the occupation of our land. It means not to give possibility for Russia to attack other countries, Baltic, Poland, and then to bring all of us back, by this aggression back to USSR. We don't want. That's only position for this. Victory is not happiness. Victory is only one possibility to ally. And people in the West have to recognize it. Not our values, common values. Not our war, common war. We pay the highest price, it's true. And I don't want to repeat these words. Everybody know this word, but they can not only know. People in the West have to feel it.
People in the West have to feel it. Now, what kind of an argument for more aid is that? People in the West have had enough. The EU borrows money to send equipment down there. We print money to send equipment there. At some point, maybe a gaggle of Republicans in the House, the 40 or 45 conservative and libertarian Republicans will say to Kevin McCarthy, no way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to hear him speak like that. And I know he, as the leader there, he's tired, he's exhausted, but and it's hard for him to judge his own mistakes, and he's made many mistakes. And of course, we've helped him, we've assisted him, and pushed him into those mistakes. But it sounds pretty almost kind of desperate, really. He's accepting the fact that Ukraine is not going to be what Ukraine was, and to me, that's a step in the right direction. It is not going to be what it was. The Donbass is going to stay Russian. Crimea is going to stay Russian.
Right.
Ukraine is not going to be a part of the EU. It's not going to be a part of NATO. And he's kind of understands this. When it comes to pain, though, I think they've put plenty of pain on Europe. Europe is hosting, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees who are not going home. They're not leaving. Those welfare states are absorbing them. Of course, our country and our money situation and the $100 billion now that we've sent there to be completely wasted. Okay.
Correct.
We had a treaty that could have been honored. We wouldn't have had a war. So, and we chose not to honor that treaty. We forced them to think they could, do something, make something happen. And that was our mistake and their mistake. And he's right to be depressed. He should be depressed. Hopefully that's a sign that we will get to the table soon and put an end to it.
You mentioned this at $100 billion. The Pentagon's crazy way of calculating the value of equipment that we send there. Nobody knows what the number is, but whatever it is, the blank check was $113 billion, and the White House has just asked for another $28 billion. Now, Kevin McCarthy's the speaker is in their pocket on this, so he'll probably tuck that $28 billion into, the National Defense Authorization appropriation, so that no member of Congress could, without extraordinary courage, vote against it. I don't know. General Milley, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, leaves office at the end of this month, and he's been giving many farewell interviews. He gave one to my friend David Martin, who's been the CBS Pentagon correspondent for a long time. And he took David down into an inner sanctum, into a subterranean room, which appears to be the Pentagon equivalent of the White House Situation Room. And in that room are flat screens, and on the flat screens are maps of Ukraine showing the locations of Ukrainian troops. Now, this is a little bit longer than a minute, but it's fascinating. The interesting parts that I want to ask you about are at the end.
And General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
What do you have up first this morning?
About 10 minutes, I got a call with General Zelensky.
General Valery Zaluzhny, commander of Ukraine's armed forces.
I talk to him every week as a minimum, sometimes twice a week, 3 times a week.
That much?
Mm-hmm.
It's 6:45 a.m. 3 hours later, he takes us underground, deep in the bowels of the Pentagon, into a top-secret command center where all the intelligence collected from the battlefields of Ukraine is monitored by his staff.
This is the crew that keeps Secretary and I informed on a day-to-day basis of what's happening out there in the current operation.
How well can you see through the fog of war from here?
The fog and friction of war is always present, but our information systems are pretty good.
All right. I don't know how much time you had. It was just up there for a couple of seconds, but it would seem to me those flat screens are NDI. You know what that is, National Defense Information. That's what Donald Trump and the young man in Cape Cod, Jack Teixeira, have been indicted for possessing or showing. Am I overly concerned about this? Am I making a good point? Or is this like, oh, Judge, it's just a snapshot and those things are probably so old they wouldn't tell anybody anything?
I imagine they're not so old. I imagine it was current stuff that they're looking at. And I think it reveals the hypocrisy, really, of what we call intelligence and knowledge and battlefield knowledge. I mean, you know, what interested me, I mean, obviously that would clearly violate a law if we applied the laws and the trends equally, which we do not. A Biden administration can do no wrong. And his opposition can only do wrong. So, I mean, that's how they do it. But it's interesting to me that he says he talks to General Zelensky several times a week. Because I really, and as he walks into the bowels of the Pentagon and looks at these, you know, his intelligence, it's like, dude, you need to get out of your hole. You need to go into the world a little bit and find out what is going. Because if all I'm doing is watching a screen like that, and intel, they all work for you. They give you what you want. And then you're talking to the general who is fighting your war for you and needs your weaponry. And that's where you're getting your information from. No balance, no objectivity. Oh, it's no wonder. It's no wonder we're doing what we're doing. They have no clue as to what is happening. And that's very scary, actually. And it's kind of scary that they bring news crews into that room. That's kind of scary. That's nuts. And also identifying the people that work there. They have name tags. Again, this is not something that we would normally want to see happen in a serious security situation. But just this idea, it's almost like a theater. It's like a war theater. Nothing's really real. And the rest of the world has access to probably better information than he's getting in the OPSEC there. He needs to wake up and get some of that, because people are dying. As he sits there and has his friendly media and he shares how he makes his decisions, in which Ukrainian general he talks to 3 times a week, the rest of the world is watching what's really happening. And that is the destruction of Ukraine, the continued destruction of Ukraine. I mean, it hasn't stopped since the beginning. He's overseeing that. You know, what is he? I'd like to know what he's telling Zelensky. The general Zelensky, what is he saying to him? Oh, keep fighting a little bit longer. You know, keep throwing your guys at the front line. Let them get chewed up some more. Oh, we'll see what we can do. Congress, maybe they'll come through. You know, what is he telling him? If I was, that's insane. It's offensive. It's offensive to Ukrainians. It's offensive to Americans.
Colonel, your soliloquy is one of the best I've heard. And we'll end our show today on that. But thank you very much Colonel Kwiatkowski, always a pleasure, becoming a fan favorite. I hope you come back and join us next week.
Okay, of course, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Tomorrow, oh, I got to check the time so I don't mislead you. I think it's at 1:30 in the afternoon. Jack Devine, who I know so many of you love to hate. Yes, 1:30 in the afternoon Eastern, Jack Devine. 4:15 tomorrow afternoon Eastern, our Intel Roundtable with Larry Johnson and Ray McGovern. And probably sometime tonight, we will break that 200,000 threshold. We're at 199,000, very close to 200,000. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a coworker about judging freedom. You don't hear things like you just heard from Colonel Kwiatkowski denouncing the behavior of the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff anywhere else, but you'll hear it here, because here we defend your personal liberty.